guys. So here this morning on a special morning edition of Beers and Barbells, the Babes of GPT, we have Eva Januszkiewicz with us. So first of all, Eva, hi, how are you?
Hey Mags, I'm great. How are you?
I'm lovely. What are we drinking this morning?
I made, since it's a morning edition and, we're kind of virtual brunching, I made myself a little mimosa.
Lovely. I have a tropical cider because that is what I had in my home. So, first I would love to ask you about just yourself. So if you could just introduce yourself really quickly for us, just tell us who you are, where you're from, how old you are, how long you've been training, like all that good stuff.
Sure. So obviously my name is Eva or Eva, whichever you prefer, Januszkiewicz. And I was born in Poland, emigrated here to the United States. I've lived in Connecticut my whole life since then. I've been training with Ryan and Team GPT since like the very beginning, essentially. So like when we were still in the garage at his parents' house. So I'm 28 now. I was probably like 17 maybe when I started training with Ryan. So it's been a while. Those were the garage crew days. That was fun. We would like do prowler pushes until people were throwing up. It was insanity.
I can definitely see, I can see that in my brain.
Yeah, it was like Tom, Corso, Lauren, and like that was when like Alex Thomas and like Carl were training with him, and so it was fun, but also just like exhausting.
So
Yeah.
how did you get into this? Like, were you an athlete beforehand or?
Yeah, so when I played soccer pretty much my whole life, and I was a swimmer for a little while, but soccer was kind of like my main squeeze. And so I played collegiate, just D3, but collegiate soccer when I went to Smith. And I tore my right ACL. I was still in high school, and then my left ACL when I was in college. Yeah, so Ryan like helped me with the rehabilitation process. And he kept like pushing the strength aspects of it, as you might imagine. And he just like signed me up for a meet, and like he kind of didn't give me an out. He's like, this is what you're doing, and I was like, okay.
And did you like fall in love with it then, or did it take a while for you?
No, it was that first competition, and like it was a small meet. I'm pretty sure we were in Rhode Island. And I think there was only like maybe 2 or 3 other, because I was still a junior. There was like maybe 2 or 3 other girls in my weight class even at that time. And the weight classes were different. So it was like the 140, I think it used to be like 147 or something like that. So
yeah,
there was like almost no one in my weight class. It was just like me and a couple other people, I think. And so I ended up like winning the meet, having not had any like training really yet. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like the strongest person ever. And I was just like, I became like essentially like addicted to it. I mean, I fell into it pretty fast. And then I think over time, luckily, it wasn't just the competition aspect. It was more for me and how I can beat my own PRs. And that's when I think I really kind of started to thrive in the sport, because it was more about how can I improve rather than who can I beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that tends to mess your mindset a little bit. Like when you're just comparing yourself so much against other lifters.
Oh yeah, it's like detrimental sometimes.
Absolutely. And you get in your own head and it's a nightmare. So how have you found that strength training has affected your life outside the gym?
Oh, very positively. And I talked about this in some of my pay school, I think, applications, where it teaches you a type of discipline and motivation that I think you can't really find somewhere else, because it's very self-rooted. So only you can pick yourself up and get yourself to the gym, right? Only you can say, okay, did that feel hard? Did that feel easy? Can I add that extra 5 pounds? And it's those little incremental pushes that kind of get you to the next level. And it's a lot of self-discipline, like even with not just strength training, but nutrition that comes with it. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of saying no to foods that you like or drinks that you love.
Or drinks that you love.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of sacrifice, but I think that ultimately teaches you how to be a better teammate, how to be a better coworker, and putting other people kind of first, because you know what it means to sacrifice for yourself. So they really tie in well together. And I think it's influenced me in a lot of ways that are all positive.
That's awesome. So I know that you've been going to PA school this past year or so.
Yeah.
And you've also been balancing that with some powerlifting work. Now I know it's not like what you're used to, but how has that balance been for you?
So we're in this thing now, what we call modules. So we had like our fundamentals training, like basic medical knowledge and like biochem and all that stuff, anatomy. And now we're in like the actual medicine learning part of it. So we just finished cardiology, for instance. And when you're in modules, sometimes like some weeks you're bombarded with like exams and you have other classes too. So those weeks I have like a Ryan and I actually see Sophie for PT. They write me like a separate like day. They're like, okay, if you only have like 10 to 15 minutes that day, just do these things. And they're all like resistance band workouts that I can like do. Yeah, that I can do when I'm like watching a lecture or something. Whereas like if I have a little more time and on the weekends, then I'll actually like just go and do a full workout. And Ryan has adjusted my program so that my main lifts are still there. But all my accessory work is kind of on a, I think a lot of us do it. It's like on a, what do you call it? Like a circuit. So
Yep.
it's quick, you know, and that's been really helpful because I just don't have the time. And I know it's like, everyone's like, oh, okay, like, well, you know, it's, and I used to preach this too. It's like, if you want it, if it's important to you, you'll make the time. And yeah, that's true. But right now, like school supersedes that importance. But ultimately, like I can spend every single waking moment studying medicine. I still won't be 100% at it. It takes time. So you have to give yourself the mental break sometimes and the physical break.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been watching you online kind of trying to, like do both. And you're doing amazing. Like I can't believe you get to the gym as often as you do. So like that's awesome. What so like hang on. Can you say something?
I said, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that my audio was still there. So now fun question. What is your favorite lift and why?
Ooh, okay. So my favorite lift used to be the deadlift. Because I was just the best at it out of the three. I think now my favorite lift is squat. And I think that's mostly because it's so like finicky for me. Like some days feel excellent and some days feel terrible. And it's the one lift where I'm like, no, like you literally just did the same weight for more reps a couple days ago, just push through it. And it's that part of it, like that mental battle that I'm constantly having, that's like super intriguing to me. So for right now, I really like squat, especially because I'm like really maintaining to try to hold on to my gains in the squat. I feel like I'm like it just gets lost so fast. But
Well, you're doing so many different things and it takes, I mean, it's literally like one of those, like a deadlift, like a full body movement. Not like any of them aren't, but it's just one of those ones, especially with the mental toughness that it takes to get under that bar, that I can totally understand where you're coming from there.
I lift alone most of the time now because I'm at school, you know. So when you're training by yourself and you're like, okay, like if you're deadlifting, it's like, okay, I could always just put this down, no big deal, right? And with bench, it's not so heavy for me where like I feel like I will get stapled. And then you also have like the safeties that you can use and whatever with the bench so that doesn't crush you if you have to drop it. But with squat, I'm like, well, you know, it's just me and the barbell. And if I don't get this, then it is what it is. So
Yup.
yeah, so training alone gives it like another kind of weird component to the mental aspect of it. Like, am I too scared to do this? And like you have to just kind of grind through and know your limits and be safe, you know.
I think a lot of people are figuring that out right now, and that a lot of us are training alone at home, like with the pandemic and everything. So Soph and I were talking about this, like I think last week, that she failed to squat at home. I also actually I was zooming with her, like we were doing a Zoom workout, and I failed to squat at home, and that shit is scary.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to like fall backwards with, I mean, it wasn't a ton of weight. It was like, for me, it was 255. I don't know what she failed. It was probably around 300 or something.
Yeah.
But it was like a moment that made me second guess. I'm like, should I even be training down here? Like, should I be training alone with no one here to like save me if I need saving?
Right.
So
Yeah, it's scary because like when you take out a really heavy weight and you're like, oh, I have her on this side and I have her on this side, like I'm all set. Like if I freaking pass out under this bar, I know these people are going to catch it.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like a sense of security, but now you're like, oh, okay. Like it's just little me here. Okay. You know? So
try not to die, you know?
Yeah. And like, there's been lifts where I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you do all the cues, right? So I'm like, okay, like I feel stuck. I'm like, okay, pull the bar apart with your hands. Just push your knees out, and like you're talking to yourself mentally and like just literally just trying to survive. And I'm just like, okay, go.
So like, speaking of that though, like what's been your biggest struggle as a lifter?
Overall, I would say for me, it's confidence. And I think Ryan would agree. There's so many times where I just like, I know the strength is there, but I just was, for whatever reason, not confident enough in my abilities to execute. Otherwise, probably right now, specifically with school, it's just like dedicating the time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel you on like that confidence part too, because I'm the same. I get the same way. I get it in my head way too much, and stuff that like should move doesn't, because I just get in my head too much. And so, but
and
like
mad, and then I'm like, oh, like, and then I kick myself. But then Ryan's like, well, okay, so now you have another like 3 or 4 weeks before you can try this again. And I'm like, duh.
I know. I know. So, and I know that you've had a lot of triumphs as a lifter, but what do you think like was your biggest triumph that like you hold closest to your heart?
Probably still like when I won my weight class at the Arnold. Probably that was just like, that was a battle, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I think I had never hit that deadlift. I think it was I think maybe it was like 424 or something, maybe even less. I don't know. But
I think it was 424. I think it was.
Yeah, whatever I needed to like chip it to win. And then it was just like back and forth battle. And Chad was there with me and was just like, his support was huge too. Yeah, and I was just like, I need this to win this whole thing. And I did it somehow. So
Nice.
definitely something that I still like look back on. I still watch the videos and I was like, that was cool.
Yes, you should. I mean, that was a really dope performance. It was really, and it was like, I know that like we were all like watching from, I think we were watching from the gym, or I remember like at least seeing clips of you at that event and just being like, that's awesome.
It was fun. And like, that's how I feel now. Like, so when I was like between work and then now that I started school, and I watch the streams and I'm just like, I find myself just being like, go, like rooting for people that, and like sometimes people I don't even know, and I think that camaraderie of the sport is kind of also why I love it so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. Like having like the team is really like, or like not like the team, but like the team of all of us.
Yeah.
Is definitely like and rooting for people that you don't know and be like, come on, grind through, because we've all been there.
Yep.
So
if for some reason your head just locks into that one person that you're listening to that's like just cheering for you like the loudest, and you're like, yeah, they're right, like I have this shit, like yes. Like
yeah.
So
usually it's Kate. Usually it's Kate Dunn.
Best like rooter for everyone. She's
the team cheerleader, whether or not she likes it. Like she's the best.
And that's so appreciated, I'm sure, by everybody, so
it really is. When you hear Kate in the background, like on your lift, you're like, yes, thank you so much. I'm not dying.
And even like in training, like when we would be at the gym and all you think you're like just in your own little corner in a squat rack, and all of a sudden Kate's across the gym and she's like, go, you got it. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So
it's the best.
I hear her, like on replay. It's awesome. She's the best.
So now we've got a couple of questions that are more kind of female centric. The first of which is, do you change anything in your training cycle when you're on your period?
So I personally don't. I feel like so the first like couple of days of my cycle, I feel like pretty like lethargic.
Yeah.
And the only thing that helps me to like not feel like that is like either training or doing some physical activity. So if anything, it helps me. The cramps always suck, obviously, but I don't really do anything about them, to be honest. I just acknowledge that they exist and I go about my day kind of thing. Like they're not, they used to be like detrimental for me and they're not anymore, thank goodness. So yeah, nothing really changes. But I also listen to my body. If I don't feel like doing something that day, I just don't. And I don't push it and I don't make myself feel guilty about it. I tried to drop that a long time ago because that wasn't a healthy mindset. And so now I'm just like, okay, well, if you don't feel like doing anything, and I'm not like, oh, the next day you have to make up for it. Nope, just gonna chill that day, let my body rest, do what it needs to do, and then get back to it the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of the same way in terms of the way, like, I don't really change anything. Like, I'll go in and do my program for that day, regardless of, what's going on with my body. But if I'm having a day where I'm just like, I'm exhausted, I'm starving, it's been like this all day, it's not getting any better, like, I will, like, kind of change the way, like, I'll change my schedule so that I can go in on a day where I feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But so do you actually, this is something that I don't know, do you deal with stress incontinence at all?
No, I luckily don't, but I felt like I could, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
When I'm lifting and I'm just like, oh, like all of a sudden I'll stop and be like, wait, did I pee? And I'm like, okay, hold on. And so then I go to the bathroom and like I don't, and I'm like, oh, okay, good. But so I definitely felt like that. But I think what helped me was I had so many neck and like back problems that I did a ton of breathing work, like from really early on in lifting before the weights were really even that heavy. And I think that's helped with like control of the muscle tone. And I think partly it's just it's like your nervous system, right? So for me, I just got lucky that mine's not super affected. If I overexerted myself, do I think it could happen? For sure, because it could happen literally to anyone. But yeah, luckily I don't have to deal with that too much.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's a pain. It's a pain in the ass, like to like have to like run to the bathroom between sets every single time, and
Mm-hmm.
still sometimes you're just like, well, I guess this is happening.
Dude, like
So
you can watch many women on the platform, like the strongest people, and like so I've asked, like what you deal with this, like what do you do? And they're like, well, I've tried literally wearing like a really thick pad. I pee between every single set. And I think the only thing that's really helped a lot of my friends who do deal with it is the breathing work. And I was like, wow, thank goodness, like I had this for literally an unrelated reason.
yeah.
Because maybe it would be something that I deal with more so. But I do still get like the meat jitters, which I know is totally different, but like
The
I still
what?
the,
What is a meat jitter?
it's like oh
Oh,
girl.
like a not like a meat, like a steak, like a
No,
meat,
like
like a
when you're in a meet and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna pee my pants or I'm gonna crap my pants. I was like, and you just feel like disgusting because like there's so much supplementation and like you're taking caffeine and like sometimes when you have to cut weight, you're like dehydrated too, and then you're like drinking a ton of water all of a sudden, and then you have to pee a million times. Like, yeah, so I definitely when I'm in a meet environment, like when I'm competing, I feel I'm like it's a whole other ball game. But yeah, I mean, in terms physiologically, like I luckily I don't have to deal with it. But hopefully there's a couple more resources for people who do, and they can
oh
work on.
yeah. I know that Rory Alter does a lot with like pelvic floor exercises and stuff like that. And actually Soph is getting certified too in like some kind of, women's health PT where she can end up helping us as well as like those of
Awesome.
us who do pee, which is awesome. So I mean, because I know that it's like not ideal, but it's also something that I'm not willing to like dial down my training,
No.
or yeah, exactly. I'm not willing to like dial things back because I pee a little, well, or a lot. If I'm like lifting heavy, it's just something that comes with the territory for me, at least.
Right. And I mean, having been in the sport for so long, like when people see it for the first time, they're like, so like, oh, and I'm just like, oh yeah, like, I'm just like, yeah, so like, I mean, to me, it's like so not a big deal to like even see it, that I'm just like, whatever. Like my family, when they watched me, I forget when they were streaming something, they're like, do you know like that girls like pee when they're lifting? I was like, oh yeah. I was like, that's like totally
All the
normal.
time.
And they're like, really? And I was like, well, I mean, think about it. Think this through. They're picking up, 400, some of them 500, 600 fucking pounds. Yeah, you're gonna freaking pee a little bit, like sometimes,
It's gonna happen to you, like at some point, like
200 pounds. Like, let's say you like one breath is off, or you're like not bracing the way that works for you. Things happen. So.
exactly. Now, this is something that you may have dealt with a little bit more than the rest of us, because I know that you have a really big social media following. But do you find that, like, outside the gym environment, that you've gotten any kind of, I guess, negative feedback from people out in the world, either about your physique or about how much you're lifting or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So it was a lot worse, actually. Like, I think when I first started, there's, in my opinion, been a huge movement of women in strength sports, especially powerlifting. It's grown significantly from the time that I began lifting to now. And before, there was a lot of kind of like, I guess, not even access, but just like visibility of women in strength sport. I got a lot of negative feedback, like, oh, you're gonna look like a man, you're so bulky, like you're, like, why are you doing this to yourself? Isn't this torture? Like, why do you want to look like that? Don't you want to be feminine? But the list goes on. And then, there was also a lot of negative feedback about how much time I dedicate to it, because it isn't something that you just go in, do a 40-minute freaking workout, and then you're home. It's a couple of hours that you're dedicating a day when you're training rigorously. It's a lot less now, I think, because due to the help of other women in the sport who have a huge following. I mean, like, I don't have a huge following, but like when people who do, right?
Yeah.
That's helped a lot. And I think also women just joining their local gyms and local strength sport gyms. So like, powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman. When you go into an environment and you say, oh, okay, like, look at all these other women here, it kind of breaks the stigma, which is why it's so important for all of us to like stick with it and like keep going,
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have had a lot of negative feedback. And even from my family, like my family supports me. They like come to my meets and they're like, you're so strong. That's awesome. And then sometimes like on a random day, they'll be like, oh, like, do you really want to keep doing that? Like, doesn't it hurt? Like, are you getting injured? And I'm like, no. Well, like, yeah, I did get injured, but like for other reasons. But it was like, yeah, like this is what I love to do. I'm going to keep doing it. So yeah, I'd get negative feedback, but I think that it's not, to me, it's not, I'm not like shunning the negative feedback, because that gives me an opportunity to educate.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, that's what we want to do right now, right? And so, especially as someone who's going to be a healthcare provider, to me, it's really, education is like huge. And I was a teacher, so like obviously education, right? But so any opportunity that I have to do that, I'm all for it.
So it doesn't bother you at all? Like, it doesn't get under your skin?
It used to a lot, especially when I was younger. But I mean, like, I don't know, I'm like over a decade into this now, so.
So you're kind of used to it. And
Like,
do you still find that you get comments like that, or are you finding more so now that like we're having more of a positive conversation about women in strength sports?
I would say the latter for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm sure I've also kind of like tightened up my, like, what I'm showing on social media. So it's a lot less like, physique selfies, or for example, because I have control over the content I post. And sometimes I think like when I would post that, there would be a ton of positive feedback, but that one negative comment, it would kind of sit with me wrong. And
Mm.
I just didn't want to put myself through that anymore, because people are going to still say whatever they want to say, and they have a right to. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, like, it's, if you're posting something, you're going to expect to have feedback on it, whether it's good or bad. And that's kind of the whole platform of social media. So if I, in my head, I'm like, okay, they could just not say anything, which would be great, but people are people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just kind of like change what content I'm going to post, and it still gets some negative feedback, but overall it's like really positive. And I think a lot of people who were maybe posting about like mean things are kind of distracted right now about other stuff that's going on in the world. So
So they're laying off you for the moment.
for now, yeah. But yeah, it doesn't bother me too much now. And if I could give like a word of advice, it would just be like, think about the content you want to post it anyway. Even if you think, okay, I'm really proud that I look like this, or I had this accomplishment, or I lifted this, even if I did XYZ, like I still love that this happened and that this is who I am. I still totally support posting that, because ultimately, like, it's not going to matter that you got one bad comment. Like, think of all of the pride you have when you're thinking, oh, I want to post this post and I want the world to see this, whatever that content is. So I still support people just doing whatever they want to make themselves happy over whatever the masses are going to say to them.
Absolutely. So I've only got two more questions for you. The second to last question is about just GPT as a whole. So, I mean, you've been with Ryan for like over 10 years now, it sounds like.
Sure.
How has being a part of this team molded you as an athlete?
Yeah, that's huge. So, I mean, like I told you, like Ryan gave me no option but just to like lift. So I think I would say like Lauren and we started with him so young that like we were like his little guinea pigs, and he was like, okay, I'm like my first two female athletes. Well, not first two, because he did a ton with like softball players and other athletes and stuff. But like we were kind of his like lifters, you know? And he was super supportive of us, like the from the beginning. And so I think just having the core team of people and people who supported, like there was never a question about us being two girls in a gym full of boys. Like that was never even, like I never felt uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that totally molded me in a really good way as an athlete, because it was like I've had a really good support system and I was strength training. So I would like hit PRs and everyone was excited for me, you know? And that was huge. And that still continues today on a way more massive scale than it did when we were back in like the garage gym. But that still happens. And like, there's people I don't even know at the gym anymore because I've been away for so long, and I can come back and it's still the same kind of like feeling of camaraderie as there always has been. So yeah, for sure. It's molded me as an athlete. It's made me heal, obviously made me stronger, but also like helped me mentally, emotionally, all the different capacities, for sure.
Yeah, I am so grateful to have, like, I'm getting kicked out. I told you, right? I got kicked out of a commercial gym.
Yeah. No, I've heard your story and I love it.
So like finding this gym was like the best thing that ever happened to me in terms of like my sport, and like I've just found so many friends that I think are going to be around for like basically the rest of my life, it feels like, and I just feel like I found like a little home.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's really important to be able to feel that comfort of family and home in a place where you're doing some work that like can make you feel vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely like super grateful for Ryan and his team and the gym and everything. So I can't wait to go back.
Better than me. Like that's the way that you said that was perfect. It's like when you are lifting, you do feel vulnerable. I mean, at least me, I'm sweating. I look pretty gross most of the time. Like you make weird faces. Like sometimes you pee or poop or fart. Like it's just weird. Like it's a weird sport, you know? And people are just like, they don't care. Like you hit the lift, or even if you did it, they're like, you got this next time.
Exactly.
You're literally looking to strangers to like spot you, which feels like they're like your little angels. Like if you die, they're gonna save you. You know what I mean? Like,
yep. Exactly.
So yeah, it's a huge it's a very individualized sport, but that family is huge. You're so right. You said it very well.
It's that level of trust that like you said, you can walk in and you can ask two strangers to spot you, and you can like come onto that bar knowing that they're not going to let you die, you know?
Full confidence that they're being taught correctly and that they're going to be helpful.
Exactly. And so the last question I have for you is do you have any advice for people who are just getting into, especially women who are just getting into this sport?
Yeah, I would say, so what I like to use social media for now, that's like changed over the years, is not just like entertainment, but for me, it's education. So I follow a lot of accounts that are like lifting accounts and then also medical accounts, right? So the two things that I'm like most passionate about. So I would say start by whatever your goal is. Like write your goal down, you know, whether it's just to learn how to use a barbell, right? Or whether it's to learn how to do the 3 competitive lifts of powerlifting, whatever your goal is, like write your goal down and then seek out supplemental and inspiring and helpful and educational accounts, even if like to you, like having something that's like lifting related that's funny is going to help you in some way, follow those people. And you'll gain a lot from just having that on your feed versus something like that's purely just for entertainment, you know? So that's a good mix too, but obviously to have something that will teach you. And then I think from there, find a coach, because I think it's invaluable to have a coach.
Yeah.
Like you have to have someone to guide you, at least from the beginning, to teach you the proper skill set to do the sport properly, safely, and like to make the most improvement in the shortest amount of time. Because it's and Mags, you probably will agree with me, when you're just beginning, that's like a sweet spot that you never get again. Because once you have built up a certain foundation, then you're like really inching toward those like 2 pound increments, 2.5 pound increments, 5 pound increments. And it's like, I will hit like a 5 pound PR and be like, God is good.
I know.
2 years, like, you know, so, I think the beginning when you're like putting 50 pounds, 100 pounds on your total in like a matter of a couple months, that only comes once ever. So having to do that is huge. So I think get a coach, write your goals down, find some educational, inspirational people to follow on social media if that's what you're into. And then don't be nervous to put your first step into a gym. Right now it's kind of hard, obviously, because people are home and we're all separated. But I think once we're all able to come back together, definitely just find a strength gym that you want to go to and don't be afraid to get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Like, your advice has been invaluable, and coming from someone like you who's number one been in the sport for so long and who is so strong and so inspirational to so many people. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And we will catch you next time.
You're so kind. Thanks for all your kind words, and I had a great time. So hey, cheers.
Cheers, woman.
Time, but